Eleanor jolted awake to the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. It wasn't the usual buzz of a text or a late-night email. This was different, urgent. Groggy, she reached for the device, squinting at the bright screen. Secure trace alert. Location data accessed. Her stomach twisted. Secure trace? She didn't remember installing any app like that. She glanced at Victor, her husband, lying next to her in deep sleep. His back was turned as usual. Lately, that's how it always was. She hesitated, her pulse quickening. The room felt too quiet, too still, as if something unseen was watching. She swiped up, opening the alert. A map appeared, showing every place she'd been in the past week. The grocery store, her office, Valerie's house, even the brief stop she'd made at a lawyer's office 3 days ago. A chill ran down her spine. She scrolled deeper. The app had more than just her locations. Call logs, texts, internet searches, even her private notes. Everything was being tracked. Her hands trembled as she backed out of the app and searched through her settings. Secure Trace wasn't something she had installed. It was buried deep, running silently in the background. Who put this here? And more importantly, why? Her breath caught when another notification flashed on the screen. Audio recording in progress. A sharp knock of fear hit her chest. Heart hammering, she tapped into the folder labeled recordings and scrolled to the most recent file, just 3 days ago. Hesitating for only a moment, she pressed play. A soft, familiar voice floated from the speaker. Her voice. I don't know, Valerie, something's off. He's been working late, always on his phone. He acts like he's hiding something. Eleanor nearly dropped the phone. Someone was listening. Someone had heard everything. A sickening realization settled over her like a thick fog. Whoever installed this app had been tracking her every move, listening to her conversations, and now, they wanted her to know. Another notification. Unknown device accessing secure trace data. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Her entire body felt hot, as if the walls of her bedroom were closing in on her. Every hair on her arm stood on end. Someone was watching her right now. She squeezed her phone tightly, forcing herself to think. This wasn't an accident. Someone had installed this app manually. Someone had access to her phone, her life. Her gaze shifted toward Victor. He was still fast asleep, breathing steadily, completely unaware of the storm unraveling inside her. For the first time in her marriage, she didn't just feel hurt or suspicious. She felt afraid. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, stirring her coffee with slow, deliberate motions. Across from her, Victor moved with his usual morning routine, checking emails, adjusting his tie, scrolling through his phone like she wasn't even there. But today, she wasn't just watching him. She was studying him. Big day at work? She asked, keeping her tone casual. Victor barely looked up.
Yeah, meetings all day.
Don't wait up. Meetings.
Right.
She nodded, forcing a small smile as he grabbed his briefcase and pressed a quick kiss to her cheek. Cold, distant. Then he was gone, walking out the door like everything was normal. Except it wasn't. Not even close. Eleanor sat frozen for a moment, the weight of last night pressing down on her chest. The tracking app. The recordings. The realization that someone, maybe even Victor himself, was spying on her. The sound of footsteps pulled her back to reality. Olivia, her 15-year-old daughter, walked into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from her eyes.
Mom?
Olivia's voice was hesitant. Can I talk to you about something? Eleanor straightened, forcing herself to focus. Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong? Olivia hesitated, glancing toward the front door as if making sure Victor was really gone. Then, she took a deep breath. I found something weird on Dad's laptop, she admitted. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Olivia pulled out her phone and tapped through a few screens before holding it up. On the display were screenshots, lines of text, and strange file names, each one labeled with cryptic codes. I was helping him organize some work stuff last weekend, Olivia explained. But these files, they were encrypted. And when I tried to open one, the whole system locked up. It was like security-level encryption. Way too advanced for a regular law firm. A sick feeling settled in Eleanor's stomach. Secure trace. The spyware. The tracking. And now, encrypted files on Victor's laptop? This wasn't just about their marriage anymore. Did you tell your dad you saw these? Eleanor asked carefully. Olivia shook her head.
No.
Something about it felt wrong. So, I emailed them to myself first. Just in case. Eleanor let out a slow breath. Smart girl. But now, she needed answers. The investigation begins. By noon, Eleanor sat across from Marcus Reed, a former federal investigator turned private detective. He had been recommended by Valerie, someone who actually knew how to dig deeper. He flipped through a file on his desk, his expression unreadable. Tell me what you found, Eleanor said, gripping her hands together. Marcus leaned forward. Victor isn't just tracking you. He's involved in something a lot bigger. Eleanor swallowed hard. How much bigger? Marcus exhaled, tapping on the file. The software on your phone? Secure Trace? It's not just an app, it's a tool used by intelligence agencies. Black market surveillance software, illegal for personal use. The words made Eleanor's head spin. I traced the account connected to your phone, Marcus continued. It's linked to a shell corporation. And that corporation is tied to offshore accounts, money laundering, and high-profile clients. Eleanor's throat went dry. Clients? She repeated. Marcus nodded grimly. Politicians. Judges. CEOs. Your husband isn't just spying on you, Eleanor. He's part of a massive corruption ring. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Victor's working for them? She asked, barely believing what she was saying. Marcus shook his head. Not exactly. He's not the mastermind. He's just a pawn. Someone higher up is pulling the strings. The people behind this? They control elections, court cases, corporate deals. They ruin people who stand in their way. And if Victor installed that spyware on your phone, it means they're watching you, too. Eleanor felt her entire body tense. Her home. Her phone. Her life. Someone was controlling it all. And now, she had proof. Eleanor gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white as she sped down the nearly empty highway. The glow of the streetlights flickered against the windshield, casting sharp shadows on Olivia's face as she frantically typed away on her laptop in the passenger seat. They're still tracking us, Olivia muttered, her eyes locked on the screen. They have a signal on our car. I need another minute. A minute. They might not have that long. In the rearview mirror, headlights loomed. 2 black SUVs moving fast, closing the distance. Eleanor's pulse pounded as she gritted her teeth and pushed the gas pedal harder. The engine roared as the car shot forward, weaving between lanes, but the pursuers kept coming. Mom, take the next exit, Olivia shouted. Eleanor barely had time to react, yanking the wheel to the right. The tires screeched as they veered off the highway onto a dark, winding road. The SUVs followed. Panic clawed at Eleanor's chest, but she forced herself to stay focused. She had spent years feeling helpless under Victor's control, but not tonight. Tonight, she was fighting back. Victor's true colors. 12 hours earlier, Marcus had revealed everything. Victor wasn't just involved in a blackmail operation. He was a sociopath who had been covering up his crimes for years. A missing ex-wife. A buried police report. A fabricated alibi for a murder that should have landed him in prison. He wasn't just working for powerful criminals.
He was one.
Eleanor had confronted him that evening, her voice trembling but determined. You did this, she had said, throwing the printed reports onto the table. You framed innocent people. You've destroyed lives. Victor barely glanced at the papers before chuckling. Come on, Eleanor. You think you're the first person to try and take me down. He leaned forward, his voice calm, cold. I've buried problems bigger than you. That's when he had delivered the real warning. If you don't stop now, he said, I'll make sure Olivia disappears. And you'll never find her. Eleanor's blood had turned to ice. You're a monster, she had whispered. Victor had only smiled. No, Eleanor. I'm a survivor. And if you want to keep Olivia safe, you'll back off. Then, less than an hour later, the text had arrived. Back off, or she disappears. That was when Eleanor knew. Victor had no intention of letting them walk away from this. A desperate escape. Back on the road, the black SUVs were gaining. "They're trying to cut us off," Eleanor shouted, gripping the wheel as she swerved past a slow-moving truck. "I just need a few more seconds," Olivia said, fingers flying over the keyboard. Suddenly, a sharp crack rang out. A bullet shattered the back window. Eleanor gasped as glass sprayed into the car. "They're shooting at us?" Olivia screamed. Another shot. The side mirror exploded. Eleanor clenched her jaw, adrenaline surging through her veins. She had to lose them.
Now.
Up ahead, she spotted a narrow dirt road veering off to the right. Without hesitation, she jerked the wheel. The car skidded onto the dirt path, kicking up dust as it careened into the dense forest. The tires bounced violently over the uneven ground. Behind them, the SUVs hesitated. Then one followed. "Almost there," Olivia muttered, typing faster. Another gunshot rang out, hitting the trunk with a loud thud. Eleanor pushed the gas to its limit, weaving through the trees, barely avoiding the thick trunks. Come on," Olivia whispered. Suddenly, her laptop let out a beep.
Yes.
I shut down the tracker. They can't follow us now. But the SUV was still there. Eleanor spotted an opening ahead, a steep drop leading to a frozen lake below. If they didn't stop, they'd go right over the edge.
"Hold on," she yelled.
At the last second, she slammed the brakes. The tires locked, and the car skidded sideways, coming to a screeching halt inches from the drop. The SUV behind them wasn't as lucky. The driver tried to swerve, but the momentum was too strong. With a sickening crunch, the SUV flipped and plunged off the edge, smashing onto the ice below. Silence. Only the sound of their ragged breathing filled the air. Eleanor turned to Olivia, her hands still shaking. "Are you okay?" Olivia nodded, her face pale. "Yeah, I think so." They sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then, Eleanor grabbed her phone. "We're ending this tonight." Eleanor gripped the burner phone Marcus had given her, her pulse pounding in her ears as she listened to his voice on the other end. "We have her," Marcus said. "Nadia isn't who you think she is." Eleanor had spent the past few days believing that Nadia, the sleek, sharp-witted woman Victor had been secretly working with, was just another one of his accomplices. Another pawn in his web of deceit. But she had been wrong. Nadia wasn't Victor's partner. She was his enemy. Marcus continued, his voice tense. "Victor blackmailed her sister into suicide 5 years ago. He used one of his fake evidence schemes, just like he tried to do with you, to ruin her life. Nadia's been playing him ever since, waiting for the right moment to strike." Eleanor's grip on the phone tightened. "And now that moment is here." Marcus let out a slow exhale. "She's been feeding us information. The FBI is ready. But we need you and Olivia to finish this. You have the key." Eleanor glanced at Olivia, who was already at her laptop, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Her daughter, 15 years old, and already smarter than half the men who had spent years controlling their world. "Mom," Olivia said, eyes locked on the screen. "I just cracked the last firewall. I have full access to Victor's blackmail database." Eleanor's breath hitched. "Everything?" Olivia nodded. "All of it. Every bribe, every fake case, every illegal transaction." And she hesitated, swallowing hard. Evidence that Victor had someone killed. Eleanor felt her stomach drop. Victor had always been ruthless, but murder? This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. Eleanor took a deep breath and met Olivia's eyes. "Send it all to Marcus. And the FBI." Her daughter's fingers flew across the keyboard, and within moments it was done. A second later, Marcus' voice came through the phone. "It's out. The FBI is moving in." "But Eleanor," he hesitated. Eleanor's heart pounded.
"What?"
"Victor knows. He's coming for you." Victor's final move. The house was eerily silent as Eleanor locked the doors and checked the security cameras on Olivia's laptop. She could feel it. The storm was coming. A shadow moved across the front yard. Eleanor's breath hitched. "Victor." She pulled Olivia close. "Go to the basement. Lock the door. No matter what happens, Don't come out until Marcus gets here.
Mom.
Now, Olivia. Olivia hesitated for only a second before nodding and disappearing down the hallway. Eleanor turned, exhaling slowly. Her hands were shaking, but she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. A loud crash shattered the silence as Victor kicked in the front door. He stepped inside, his suit still crisp, his face unreadable, except for the cold fury in his eyes. "You really couldn't help yourself, could you?" he said, his voice eerily calm. "You just had to push." Eleanor stayed still, meeting his gaze head-on. "You lost, Victor. The FBI is coming. It's over." Victor let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "You think I don't have backup plans?" He pulled out a gun, raising it toward her. "I could make this all disappear. One shot. Self-defense. I was just protecting my home." Eleanor didn't flinch. "You really think that's going to work this time?" she asked. Victor smiled, his grip tightening. "It's worked before." Eleanor took a slow step back, leading him into the living room. The walls were lined with bookshelves, books she had once filled with stories about justice, about right and wrong. Now it was time to write her own ending. "I was going to let you walk away," Victor said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Give you a clean divorce. A fresh start. But you had to be a hero." Eleanor let out a breath. "No, Victor. I just finally stopped being afraid of you." His eyes darkened. His finger tightened on the trigger. And then, a voice echoed through the room. "You're really going to kill your wife on a live stream, Victor?" Victor froze. His gaze flicked to the TV screen across the room, where his own face stared back at him. The red live symbol blinked in the corner. His gun trembled slightly in his grip. "What is this?" he snarled. Eleanor smiled. "You love using technology against people, Victor. I thought it was time you got a taste of your own medicine." She nodded toward the screen, where millions of people were watching his every move. The hidden cameras in the house had been recording everything, broadcasting it nationwide.
His threats.
His confession. His downfall. The color drained from Victor's face. Then, the sound of sirens filled the night. His eyes darted toward the window as flashing red and blue lights filled the street. Eleanor stepped forward. "It's over." Victor let out a shuddering breath. For the first time, he looked afraid. Victor's fall. FBI agents stormed through the front door, weapons drawn. "Drop the gun." Victor hesitated for only a second before his face twisted with rage. His eyes locked on Eleanor. "You think you've won?" She met his gaze, unwavering. "I don't think, Victor." "I know." He let out a sharp breath, then he dropped the gun. Within seconds, he was shoved against the wall, cuffs snapping around his wrists. As they dragged him past her, Victor leaned in close. "This isn't over," he hissed. Eleanor smiled. "Oh, but it is." The front door slammed shut behind them, and for the first time in years, Eleanor felt free. 1 year later, Eleanor sat at her desk, looking over the latest news report. Victor had been sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. His entire network had collapsed. The scandal had taken down politicians, CEOs, and judges. But most importantly, she and Olivia had survived. "Mom," Olivia called, stepping into the room with her laptop. "You ready?" Eleanor smiled. She had been invited to speak at a national cybersecurity conference, teaching people how to protect themselves from the same digital weapons that had once been used against her. It was time to turn her pain into power. She stood, wrapping an arm around Olivia's shoulders. "Let's go change the world." The hall buzzed with quiet conversations as people filed into their seats. The stage was lit with a soft glow, and the banner behind it read, "Cybersecurity and Digital Privacy in the Modern Age." Eleanor took a deep breath, adjusting the microphone attached to her blazer. She had faced bigger battles than public speaking. This was nothing compared to what she had already survived. Olivia stood in the front row, her laptop open, ready to assist if needed. She had become something of a digital prodigy, already fielding internship offers from major cybersecurity firms. Marcus sat beside her, offering a reassuring nod. Over the past year, he had taken down more corrupt networks than he could count, and their work together had formed an unexpected but solid partnership. At the back of the room, Nadia leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Her revenge against Victor had been bittersweet, but with his empire burned to the ground, she had finally found peace. She had channeled her pain into something bigger, helping women escape manipulation and digital surveillance tactics. Eleanor stepped forward, clearing her throat. The room fell silent. When people think of cybercrime, she began, they think of hackers in dark rooms, stealing data from strangers. But what if I told you that the biggest threats aren't strangers at all? A murmur spread through the audience. She continued, what if the real danger is the person sleeping beside you? The colleague in the office next door? The person who swore to love and protect you? She paused, letting the words settle. This isn't a theory. This isn't speculation. It happened to me. She pulled up the first slide on the screen behind her. A screenshot of Secure Trace, the app Victor had used to track her. For years, I lived under the illusion that my life was my own. I had a husband, a daughter, a career. What I didn't realize was that my every move was being monitored, my conversations recorded, my digital footprint controlled. The audience was riveted now. I thought my biggest problem was a failing marriage, she said, scanning the room. I was wrong. My husband was part of something much bigger, a network of corruption that used spyware, fabricated evidence, and digital blackmail to control people at the highest levels of power. A journalist in the front row scribbled notes furiously. I could have been another statistic. Another woman who disappeared quietly, written off as paranoid. Instead, I fought back. With the help of my daughter, who happens to be one of the smartest people I know, we exposed an empire built on secrets and lies. She gestured toward Olivia, who offered a small, confident smile. And now, Eleanor continued, I stand here to tell you that no one is immune to digital manipulation. If you're not actively protecting yourself, you are vulnerable. She clicked to the next slide, how to spot digital spying and take back your privacy. For the next hour, Eleanor said, I'm going to show you how to recognize the signs, how to fight back, and most importantly, how to make sure this never happens to you or the people you love. The room erupted in applause. As she stepped back, Eleanor caught Olivia's proud gaze. For so long, she had let fear control her life. But now, she was the one in control. Victor was a distant memory, rotting in a prison cell where he belonged. His name would never again hold power over her or Olivia. She had built something new, something better. This wasn't just survival. This was victory. And they were just getting started.